Namaskar and welcome to Diplomatic Dispatch. I'm your host, VIKAS SWARUP. Last week, we examined India's ties with a close neighbor, Nepal. This week, we focus on another neighbor of India, which has witnessed dramatic political developments. I'm talking about Pakistan, where yet another elected government has been unable to complete its full 5-year term. Prime Minister Imran Khan has been ousted and replaced by the opposition's Shehbaz Sharif, who will now form a new government that can remain in place until elections are due in August 2023. The one great difference this time round is that the political change was carried out not by the army directly, but by the judiciary, which upheld the spirit of democracy and the constitution. Imran Khan, when faced with the no-confidence motion brought by the opposition, got the Deputy Speaker of the House to disallow it and then issued a presidential decree dissolving the National Assembly and ordering fresh elections. Pakistan's Supreme Court took suo motu cognizance of this development, and a 5-judge bench headed by the Chief Justice ruled that the decision to block the vote of no confidence against Prime Minister Imran Khan was unconstitutional. It ordered the National Assembly to reconvene and to hold a floor test. The ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf resorted to all manner of delaying tactics when the revived House reconvened, but was eventually defeated with 174 members in the 342-strong House voting in favor of the no-trust motion, marking this the first time a sitting Prime Minister in Pakistan was voted out. The political upheaval in Pakistan has been matched by turmoil in the Pak economy. With double-digit inflation, the cost of basic necessities such as food and fuel skyrocketing, and millions pushed into poverty. The government's economic mismanagement has depleted Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves, sent the Pakistani rupee tumbling, hitting an all-time low of rupees 185 against the US dollar, and caused Pakistan's GDP to fall from $315 billion in 2018 to $292 billion in 2022. It has now been asking the International Monetary Fund for bailout packages, and its dependence on China can only increase. Ever since its formation in 1947, Pakistan has struggled with political instability, with multiple regime changes and military coups. No Prime Minister has ever completed a full 5-year term under the present Constitution of 1973. So what does this latest change in Pakistan mean for Pakistan, for India, and the rest of the world? To discuss the unfolding situation in Pakistan, I have with me two of the best experts possible. Dr. T.C.A. Raghavan retired from the Indian Foreign Service in December 2015 when he was serving as India's High Commissioner to Pakistan. He had earlier served as Deputy High Commissioner in Pakistan, High Commissioner to Singapore, and Director General of the Indian Council of World Affairs. A history enthusiast, he is the author of 3 well-reviewed books, including The People Next Door, The Curious History of India's Relations with Pakistan. Dr. C. Raja Mohan is Senior Fellow at the Asia Society Policy Institute in New Delhi and one of the world's foremost strategic thinkers and commentators. A contributing editor on international affairs for the Indian Express, he is also the author of 6 books on various aspects of foreign policy. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Raghavan. Even though it was the judiciary that lent the finishing touches to the last rites of Imran Khan's prime ministership, many experts believe that it was the army whose invisible hand was behind Imran Khan's ouster. Now, this is the same army that in 2018 had selected Imran Khan for prime ministership when the Sharifs fell out of favor with the military establishment. So what changed between 2018 and 2022 that led the army to dump Imran Khan?
Well, a number of things went wrong, and there were numerous acts of omission and commission which led to this final situation as it developed. But to my mind, there are 3 principal factors. The first was Imran Khan's inability to run a coalition effectively. In the end, he was in government because of not his own victory, but because he was able to piece together a coalition, and the army helped him in piecing together that coalition. But in government, as Prime Minister, he was not able to take the coalition along. So there were numerous rifts within the coalition. Many felt disgruntled. And within his own party too, he was not able to keep everyone inside the tent. Factions developed. Many senior leaders felt that they were being ignored, humiliated. So that certainly was one contradiction which was slowly maturing. The second was perhaps not very effective governance style. The economy, as you pointed out, tanked, went south. People felt that the government was not delivering at all. And there was a certain street level unpopularity associated with the government, which one could argue that it was also because of 2 years of a crippling pandemic. But nevertheless, there was a general consensus that there have been significant governance failures. And the third and perhaps most significant of all was Imran Khan's larger-than-life view of himself, which led him to interfere excessively in matters which the army considered to be its own domain. In particular, the chain of command, and as you know, there was a major friction point over the appointment of the new Director General ISI, and I think that was really the straw which broke the camel's back. But in general, the army possibly felt that Imran Khan's unpopularity is rubbing off on them, and he is therefore becoming a liability. And on top of that, he is also interfering in things which are not the Prime Minister's business and the army's internal institutional issues. But I think one should also bear in mind that this is not just Imran Khan and the particular context he found himself in. There is a structural feature in Pakistan politics that tensions, contradictions usually develop between the Prime Minister as an institution and the military as an institution. So this is not the first time that such a dust-up has taken place which ended the way it did. And this structural feature, I think, is endemic in Pakistan's polity, and we are not going to see, this is not going to be the end of that feature playing out in the future also.
Indeed, a very, very comprehensive take on what led to the ouster of Imran Khan. Dr. Raja Mohan, Imran Khan was extremely hostile to the US, so much so that he never got a call even from President Joe Biden. And even as he was losing the trust vote, he claimed that the United States administration was directly involved in a conspiracy to oust him from office. So what does Imran Khan's departure mean for Pakistan's ties with the United States?
Yeah, I think what happened to Imran Khan, I mean, it's not that he was not interested in the US relationship. In fact, he was very eager to go to the United States. He went there to meet President Trump in 2019. And when he was coming back, he proclaimed that it was as if he's won the World Cup a second time.
Yes.
So he thought his visit was such a triumphant visit to the United States. And Trump, I think, was flattering him because US was looking to get out of Afghanistan at the time. Remember, they're negotiating the withdrawal agreement and they needed Pakistan's support. But I think Imran's, again, it's maverick style. I think the way as the Afghan exit began to come, I mean, he kept saying, look, I told you so. Americans were wrong from the beginning, and also the Pakistan army was wrong to support the American war in Afghanistan. Second thing, when actually Americans left, the day Taliban came back to power, he said, look, Afghans have broken the chains of slavery from American occupation. So I think he was actually, in his own perhaps unthinking way, he maximized the problem with the Americans and then kept saying, why is Biden not calling me? I don't care for his call, but constantly talking about the call that did not come. But I think the Pakistan's value for the US after the Afghan withdrawal has significantly declined. I think all of us in the developing countries think Americans are only thinking about us when they were in the waking hours. I think there is a strategic context in which Pakistan is no longer central to the US. But I think the army wants to reset the relationship. And in fact, if you see when Bajwa publicly differed with Imran Khan went to Moscow the day Putin was launching the invasion. And recently, the Army Chief General Bajwa said, look, Russian invasion was wrong. We have best relations with the West, and we need to maintain good relations, which is our main markets for Pakistan. So I think there was a clear division. I mean, you can add that to what Ambassador Raghavan pointed out. So the problem of Imran Khan's mismanagement, I think, has not just related to the United States, with India, with a lot of countries, except with China and Russia, he's tried to improve it. So my sense is the Americans would be open for a relationship. They've hinted that, look, if there is a different government, we can begin to engage. And what Imran Khan has done is really now, when you talked about blaming the Americans for it, I don't think the Americans have a hand in it. But Imran Khan is being political here, trying to tap into the deep anti-American
the vein of
sentiments
anti-Americanism,
and mobilize that. And there's a way of tainting both the army as well as the imports, what he calls the new government as imports. A lot of the praise he was giving to India's independent foreign policy was really an attack on the army's not so independent foreign policy that was tied to the United States. So I think if he's gone here, my sense is Imran would be putting a lot of pressure, but my sense there will be an effort to reset the relationship by the army, and I'm sure the government will be very, very interested.
Ambassador Raghavan, Dr. Raja Mohan makes an important point here. Look at the contrast between Imran Khan's policy towards the United States and his overture towards Russia. As he said, he was in Moscow the day the first Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine. Yet trade between Pakistan and Russia is just $200 million. So what explains this closeness towards Russia, this overture towards Russia?
I think in the Pakistani strategic community, for a long time, there's been this feeling that there should be healthier relations between Russia and Pakistan, and Pakistan should not leave, should not give Indians a free hand in Russia. That they have they should have an independent relationship with some meat to it. Now, various factors have come in the way. In the 80s, it was the differences over Afghanistan because the Soviets were in Afghanistan, and later, once the global war on terror began, the Russians saw the Pakistanis as an implicit element of the American alliance. But more recently, with a number of global shifts, and in particular, the US losing interest in Pakistan, Pakistanis getting even closer to the Chinese. The kind of interface which has developed between Russia and China, I think that overall framework also facilitated this kind of development. Now, Imran Khan landing up there when the Russian tanks rolled in, certainly it's attracted a great deal of news. But one point which he has made, and I think it is something which we should take into account, he said this was not just my decision. And before I went, I called all the stakeholders. And he said at one point that I called all previous foreign secretaries that I could lay my hand on, and they all advised me, please go now. So clearly this was a calculated judgment, not just of Imran Khan's, but of the Pakistani state systems, that this is where our interest points us to, and we shouldn't let this opportunity
I think
go.
if I might just add there,
Yes.
there's a lot of speculation, we don't know if it is true, that the Chinese were encouraging Imran Khan to go to Russia. That Pakistan is very much part of their strategy to build a regional coalition here. Since Imran Khan was distancing himself from the US, and when China and Russia are trying to form a regional front, Pakistan is an important country. Its location makes it very critical. So probably that was one encouragement that they got from China.
So let's turn the focus then to General Qamar Javed Bajwa, the army chief, who is a central figure in Pakistan. Should we take at face value his recent call for dialogue and diplomacy to settle his nation's disputes with India? And under the new political dispensation in Pakistan, do you think he's likely to get an extension when his term expires in November?
I think third-term extensions are quite rare. There is, is obviously some people, anchors close to him are saying in Pakistan television these days, no, he's not seeking a third term. In fact, because Imran Khan was saying, look, I can give him a third term or I'll sack him. So I think his third term became a controversy. So my sense is he might not. At least that's what people close to him are saying. But if things go wrong, because look, I think the way we are in Pakistan, it's not going to be smooth sailing. So if things go wrong and he's forced to take charge, then probably that is possible. But at this point, it looks like he's also, because in this fight with Imran Khan, unlike in the past, civilians just put the tail between the legs and walked out. But this guy is fighting back. He's kind of tarred the Pakistan army. So in that sense, he's diminished General Bajwa. And the fact that Bajwa has to issue a statement saying the whole of the army is with me, and that is the senior officers, that itself tells you how dangerous campaign that Imran Khan had started. So my sense is he would most likely go gracefully.
And what about his call for dialogue and diplomacy?
So my sense is, look, it's, both in February, Bajwa was instrumental in negotiating a ceasefire agreement with India. This is, mind you, in 2021. Mind you, this was after all the anger in Pakistan about India's constitutional changes in Kashmir that were implemented in August 2019. Second, General Bajwa also said, look, he wants to change Pakistan's politics from geopolitics to economics. There's been too much of strategy and politics, and Pakistan needs to get his economic house in order. And for that, you need good relationship with the neighbors. So he's saying all the right things. But the problem for them, my sense is, at this point, any big move towards India would automatically invite the charge. Yes. You're selling out. We told you they're not only selling out to the Americans, they're also selling out to the Indians. So I think there is that problem. My sense is, as Ambassador Raghavan, all of you have negotiated with Pakistan. I think probably a back channel where now, because Sharifs and Zardari in the past wanted decent relationship with India. At that time, army was the problem. When Bajwa tried to improve relations with India, it was Imran Khan, the civilians were the problem. But now I think there's a lot of room for diplomacy, not public embracing type of thing, but a quiet conversations where we can see, look, what is the room, whether India can help this government to stabilize, whether we can do things with them.
Ambassador Raghavan, let's take this argument a little bit further. Now, Imran Khan had become a complete hawk on ties with India. In fact, after the revocation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir in August 2019, the kind of language that he used against the Indian government and against Prime Minister Modi had made it politically impossible for any government in India to open channels with Islamabad. So now, with his departure and the arrival of Shehbaz Sharif, do you see a diplomatic opening?
I think there is a window of opportunity. It's not a very large one for reasons which Professor Raja Mohan said, that there is a internal debate in Pakistan, and quite an intense one, about the foreign hand, and nobody wants to be accused of selling out to the Indians. But nevertheless, there is a window of opportunity. In a very bleak situation of the last 5 or 6 years, the last 12 months or so stand out for being quite a otherwise important period in India-Pakistan relations. The first is the ceasefire. Which was mentioned. The second is that for the first time ever, you have Indian wheat transiting through Pakistan to go to Afghanistan. The third is, again, a very unusual, difficult situation, such as the Masail issue, was handled in a most uncharacteristic way by both India and Pakistan. I mean, the whole world would have expected things to blow up and lead to a crisis, but they were handled differently. So I think there is a certain context which provides a window of opportunity. How big that window is, it's very difficult to evaluate. But certainly, I think in India too, we need to be conscious of one thing, that we have to deal with Pakistan as it is, and not how we would like it to be. So I think a certain element of initiative and risk-taking on our part is also required.
Dr. Raja Mohan, what do you expect from Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif? Look, I think, nobody would envy him his job because I think the kind of conditions he faces are extraordinarily difficult for Pakistan. On the right side of the ledger, his record as the Chief Minister of Punjab, everybody says he was a competent administrator, could get things done, implement projects in Punjab, did a lot of things. But at the national level, he faces one, to maintain this coalition. At this point, everybody against Imran Khan is together with him. They got all the parties together. But as you see, he's having a problem with cabinet formation. How do you accommodate everyone's interests in running a government? Second, I think the problem of the economy is really in a bad shape. Imran Khan went into the IMF program after saying he doesn't want to. And after a year, he's walked out, again for the populist reasons. And going to the IMF and doing things would increase the pain for the people. Yes. Because the problem is when you have to take bitter medicine because you're in such a bad health, and the medicine itself is going to create problems. And that, in fact, it will reinforce the image of doing the bidding of the West and the United States. So I think shepherding the economy, to the extent that he's capable, probably can do a lot of things. But the macroeconomic context is very bleak. And the third is the foreign policy question. As we discussed a little while ago, relationship with the US and Europe, which are actually the main markets for Pakistani goods, are in bad shape. Because he picked up fight, remember, with the French ambassador as well, demanding, supporting the Islamists, because Macron said something and then you say it is, so he wanted to throw out the French ambassador. So they have a problem with both the traditional friends. Second part, in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and UAE were traditionally the best friends of Pakistan. But because thanks to improved India's relationship with both, they're no longer standing by Pakistan. And I think Imran Khan tried to side with Turkey and Malaysia when they were trying to pick on Saudi Arabia, which is the natural leader of the Islamic world, and that angered the Saudis. So I think Imran left a pretty bad trail, and India, of course, we just discussed it. So I think he has a problem which he needs to manage, and doing all the things simultaneously, stitching together a political coalition, getting the economy out of trouble, and then change foreign policy, all within the next few months, with Imran Khan out there going and blazing all guns, attacking the government on a daily basis. So this is really a tough game.
This brings us back to the subject of Imran Khan. Now he, as you know, was a very different kind of prime minister. He was an iconic cricketer, a national hero. He didn't belong to any of the mainstream parties. And he promised a Naya Pakistan, which would end corruption and misgovernance. But Dawn newspaper actually catalogued that out of the 51 promises in the manifesto of Pakistan's Tehreek-e-Insaf, only 2 were complete and 6 hadn't even started. So what kind of legacy is Imran Khan leaving behind, and how do you assess his political future?
Well, he is leaving a divided legacy because Pakistan is, in political terms, polarized between those who are with Imran Khan and those who are against him. You see, one should not overlook that he has a core support which is disenchanted with Pakistan's old style of politics, where you have these patricians who run parties which govern provinces almost like they are pocket boroughs. And there was a sense of exhaustion with that sense of politics, with that kind of politics, and Imran Khan appeared to offer something new. In government, he turned out to be a different kettle of fish, because while he would promise the moon, his delivery was very, very poor. And as I said, he was not able to keep a coalition together, to deliver on governance, etc. But nevertheless, I think that core constituency remains intact, and this foreign hand which he has invoked may help him gather some more votes. How much of a difference it will make in terms of his political future when it comes to actual balloting and voting is very difficult to say. And we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, his legacy remains that he is very much a significant political force in Pakistan and can re-emerge at any time as a major populist figure who can build up an umbrella and destabilize other political formations.
Dr. Raja Mohan, now China had also invested heavily in Imran Khan. So how does China view the developments happening in Pakistan?
I think the classical view is, look, it doesn't matter who's in power in Pakistan. They all love China. They all were the friend, the strong partner, and which has got more intensified in recent years with the CPEC, with the Belt and Road Initiative. So in a sense, the so-called CPEC game changer. So in a sense, actually, on the face of it, the relationship has deepened. But the new complication for China is the China-US rivalry. Pakistan had it great for 40 years. They were best friends for both US and China. Because, in fact, 50 years ago, Pakistan facilitated the first secret visits between, Americans going to Pakistan. Henry Kissinger went to China from Pakistan. So Pakistan was and once the two of them became buddies, Pakistan had it great. In the last 5 years, as the US-China relationship began to go down, there is a problem for Pakistan. That is, on the one hand, you see General Bajwa saying, we want good relationship with China, but we also want to improve ties, go back to our traditional ties with the US. Now, for China, this is clearly not something in their interest. They would like to see a Pakistan that would come much more closer to China, Russia, stand up against the Americans. Until now, the Chinese never criticized Pakistan's military relationship with the US. They always talk about India's Quad. They never talk about Pakistan's status as a major non-NATO ally. Because they were friends, it didn't matter what Pakistan did with the Americans. But now I think if there is a battle to reset Pakistan's foreign policy, then I think the Chinese stakes would be significant. And I would be surprised if they don't intervene and want to protect the massive political economic investments in Pakistan. It's not taken for granted. Everything will always be in favor of China.
Well, that is all the time we have, gentlemen. Thank you very much for these brilliant insights. Pakistan's current political crisis is neither the first one nor the last. The cast and the characters might keep changing, but the script remains the same. The military continues to retain an outsized role in Pakistan's politics. We will have to wait and see how Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif handles the army, the economy, and ties with India. Thank you for watching Diplomatic Dispatch. This is VIKAS SWARUP wishing you and goodbye. Good night and goodbye.